We have been talking about complex forms. You may recall that in traditional lexicography that deals primarily with paper books, these are more often called sub-entries, because in a paper book, that's how they're typically formatted. Now in Flex, because it's a database, we are not limited to only formatting it as a sub-entry. There are other options, and it's even possible to format them as a main entry. And so in this video, we will talk about how to format it as a sub-entry. But keep in mind that because Flex has the flexibility to format it multiple ways, the entry itself is referred to as a complex form entry, and sub-entry is used for one of the possible ways it can be formatted. So remember, a sub-entry is embedded in a parent entry, a main entry. And so here we see that blueberry is indented under berry, and there are several other sub-entries, raspberry, strawberry, and even though raspberry and strawberry start with R and S, in the dictionary they'll come under the entry berry, which is alphabetized in the B section. So that's one of the characteristics of a sub-entry. It's embedded inside the main entry, and in order to find the information, you have to look alphabetically for the main entry. Now, there are several fields in the entry that relate to these complex forms. At the entry level, the field called Complex Forms lists all of the entries that are linked, and this is the form that you can use to actually link entries yourself or delink them. And so if it appears in this list, then it is linked. If it is not in this list, then it is not linked. And there is an ellipsis, and you can click on that to find more entries to link. So this is a comprehensive list of all the linked entries, and it's used for linking and unlinking them. Now there's another section in the entry. Down at the bottom, the section called Publication Settings has several fields. Now when we discussed variants, we talked about the Publish Entry In and the Show as Headword In fields, so I won't talk about those. But this next field is called Sub-Entries. Now, at first glance, it looks similar to the other one, but the other one was about which entries are linked, but this one is about the formatting, and we can tell that because the name of the field is Sub-Entries. And so here, all of the complex forms are listed, but they don't have to be. If I click on the ellipsis, then I can see a list of all the complex forms. If I realize one is missing, I can add another one. And I can use this to choose which of these will display as sub-entries. If I untick one of them and click OK, notice that raspberry disappeared as a sub-entry, but now it appears up here as a reference. So remember, reference is a term that refers to anything that points at another entry, and in different kinds of entries, there are specific labels for the reference. Lexical relations can have references in them, variants can have references, and complex forms can as well. And in this case, the specific label for this reference is referenced complex form. And so notice there is a field down here with that label. Now, by default, it is filled in with all of the possible complex forms for this entry. That doesn't mean they're all going to show as a reference. This functions something as a fallback field. We've seen fallback fields that function a little bit differently. In this case, the sub-entries field is the main field. And so if something shows there, it will show as a sub-entry and not as a reference complex form. There's not a way to have it display as both. But if it's been removed from the sub-entries field, then it will display as a reference complex form. And you could delete the ones that you've set to display as sub-entries, but that's extra effort that you don't need to do. It's recommended to leave them all here. That's easier than having to remember to add them if you change your mind. Now, if you decide that you don't even want the reference, you can also click the ellipsis and untick the box, and it will go away as a reference. Now, these fields are about configuring this specific entry. Keep in mind they do relate to fields in the Configure Dictionary dialog. For now, I'm going to bring Raspberry back just so I have something demonstrating that. And so each one of these items correlates. And again, you can find out where it is in the Configure Dictionary dialog by right-clicking. So if I go to the subentry part and I right-click on the head word of the subentry, then it takes me to the head word node under subentries, which is under the main entry. And if I click on this one that's the reference, if I right-click and it takes me to the dialog, now it's on the abbreviation, which is in the complex form type in the other referenced complex forms node. So notice the main entry has one node for other referenced complex forms and another node for subentries. So the complex form will appear in one or the other of these two nodes. So that's an overview of how you can configure whether it displays as a subentry or as a reference on an entry-by-entry basis.